Hello and welcome, everybody. We're here for another Sunday teaching. I like these Sunday teachings. We're between programs, so when we are, our Sunday teachings, they're just chats, they're informal. I don't really prepare much, but uh, we talk about various topics that benefit our practice. And today's teaching uh, is going to be on mindfulness versus concentration. And this comes from an article one of our Sangha members, Keith, posted, uh, and we all enjoyed it, and we were discussing it. And I thought it would be a nice topic for Sunday teaching because it's been a good topic for my own practice. So the article is in our social media, so it's easy to find for everybody. And it's by Bhante Aratana, or they affectionately know him as Bhante Ji from Sri Lanka. And this is sometimes a bit of a confusing topic, and we'll get into we'll get into why in just a moment. But the idea of mindfulness we've studied strongly throughout our practices, through our meditation and mindfulness program. And I think the Sangha members have a pretty good idea of what that is. What's confusing is the use of the word concentration in Buddhism. And oftentimes it can be because of translation, but they'll use the word concentration for a various array of different topics. So in concentration, we have to see within Buddhism. First of all, we have the common everyday idea of concentration that we all know, just paying attention in class and trying to focus your awareness on what the teacher's saying, to not let the mind wander, and to be engaged in the experience. But then we also have concentration, or the term used in other Buddhist areas. Uh, the most prominent, of course, is the last of the Eightfold Path, the last aspect of the Eightfold Path. Um, and in that case, with the Four Noble Eightfold Path, we have, just to run through them. Number one is right view, two is right intention, three is right speech, four is right action, five is right livelihood, six is right effort, seven, right mindfulness, and eight, right concentration. Now, the last three are understood as being primarily focused on meditation itself. Though different traditions have different views, the view I learned in the Mahayana tradition, the Tibetan tradition, they didn't seem to emphasize so strongly that these are directly related to meditation. For like number six, when they say right effort, they just kind of said, well, that's just effort in all the things you do. But if you talk to a Theravada monk, as Bhante is, where the Eightfold Path is at the center of everything they do, they have a much deeper understanding of them. And in so many ways, in the Tibetan and Mahayana traditions, they subsued the Eightfold Path with the six paramitas. And so they believe that the six paramitas are a higher kind of version of the Eightfold Path. So they don't emphasize the Eightfold Path very strongly. I was always surprised by that when I got to the monastery, that it wasn't the real focus of our studies as it is in most traditions. um, but what I wanted to talk about is in Bhante Ji. And by the way, the word Bhante is just the word for monk, or possibly teacher. Um, so Bhante is any fully ordained monk you would refer to as Bhante. So that's not his name, that's his title. And Gun Aratana is his name. So the article is excellent, and I didn't want to necessarily go into it because it's a scholarly, a bit scholarly for most people. It is a good and a fast read. It's only about a page long or so, but I thought that for the Sangha, maybe some clarification could be helpful, and also some insight into motivating all of us into understanding it. So the big misunderstanding, or I agree with everything in it. And of course, Banti's a great scholar, so I'm not going to dispute what he says. I just wanted to talk about his terminology. So he uses the word concentration in a very, general way. And I think that that creates some confusion. He talks of, normally, when he's using the word concentration, most people would use the full term of single pointed concentration. That's a very unique form of concentration, of being able to keep our mind focused, usually on the breath. As we're all meditators, we know that we, in calm abiding meditation, will focus directly on the breath and then do our best to keep the mind focused on the breath without the mind wandering into thoughts. So that's the idea of single pointed concentration. And our Sangha hasn't put in a lot of emphasis on and had teachings on really developing single pointed concentration. We've been kind of teaching a wide array of meditations and not necessarily digging into one particular kind. But single pointed concentration is the goal and attainment of calm abiding meditation, whether we're focusing on the breath or we're focusing on sound or images. The idea of this is the development of single pointed concentration. And so when we talk about what it is, um, you think, well, what's the big deal? What's the benefit of being able to hold my mind on one thing? And when I was in school, they would say things like, well, imagine your ability to focus if you could really, keep your focus on the teacher and never be distracted during. So they would often make it sound like just the ability of concentration would be very beneficial. And this is true, but I think that they really missed the point. The point of single minded meditation is what happens when you attain it. So, when you have the ability to hold your mind on a single object without any fluctuation, a very specific type of mental state, meditative state, arises. That's the goal of this. I remember Stephen Batchelor in an article he wrote. He was listing all the things that he just didn't care about, and he says, I don't care about reaching this and this. He wants to flourish as a human being. And he says, I don't care if I have good concentration or something like that. But I think he also didn't quite understand the point that the concentration, though beneficial, isn't really the point. It's the mental state that arises once you're able to hold that state. And I'd love to kind of explain that a little. So instead of imagining yourself focusing on the breath without the mind going drifting away into thought and thinking to yourself, well, that would be a very powerful state. Think more about the peace that arises from the state. So normally in our lives, and often unseen by us all, there's always a push and pull of anxiety and laxity. Our experience and our internal mental experience is plagued by this. It's a spectrum. On one end, we have anxiety, this speediness. On the other end, we have a laxity where we can get into laziness. through meditation, you start to really understand this, and it becomes more and more obvious. And you start to realize how throughout your day, we're always kind of in a tennis match, getting the ball getting bounced back and forth from a state of anxiety to a state of laxity. Now, anxiety could be, uh, the feeling of being all overwhelmed by the busyness around you, the chaos around you, that feeling that there's no peace or insecurity, fear. That all can be from the anxiety side. And the laxity side can be the feelings of boredom, that you don't feel like doing anything. And so we're always kind of in between those things. And in meditation, when you can reach single pointed concentration, you reach the state and the mind stops wandering away from the breath. But what happens is you can enter this state where that that flowing uh, from anxious to laxity falls away, and it's a very distinct feeling, and it's referred to as equanimity. Equanimity meaning balance or equality, and what happens is you find that middle space between the two. Now, during our lives, of course, we're aware of this middle space between anxious and anxiety and laxity. Of course, there's moments there, but we're not really aware of it. And usually, the stimuli that we experience that helps us to be there covers up for the actual feeling of it. So, within meditation, when you reach that state, it's quite something. All of a sudden, you see all that fall away, and there is such contentment and peace, just like this big weight has been removed off of you. And you just sit in that space, and it is absolutely lovely. This is a wonderful, wonderful mental state. So this is the idea of single pointed concentration. Yes, developing more concentration is beneficial in everything we do. But the real idea is the mental state that arises from it once we're able to attain it and hold it. And again, single pointed meditation is something we experience all the time. If uh, if I was to tell everybody to watch me and I clap my hands for that minute, you're all single pointedly focused on me. When you go to a movie and the bad guys coming out of the dark, and we're all single pointedly connected to that movie, right? You don't notice the other people in the movie theater. You're not thinking anything you are single pointed in that moment. So we experience this all the time, but we're not quite aware of it. So that's a little bit of teaching for you on single pointed concentration. So when we talk about the Eightfold Path and those last three aspects, number six, right effort, seven, right mindfulness, eight is right concentration. Right concentration is probably the most problematic in terminology. Um, and the problem with it is that it the right concentration pertains more to uh, the the meditative state than the single point of concentration that's needed to achieve that. And of course, in Pali, the number eight is samadhi, right? Samadhi, and but samadhi doesn't mean concentration. Samadhi is a meditative state. So when they say right concentration, it's a little complex because single pointed concentration is what leads to samadhi, but right is about experiencing, attaining the state of samadhi. And I'd also like to have a caveat and say that I'm sharing my understanding of this. There's quite a few teachers that have quite a few different views. And the reason being is it's never been laid out very clearly in the sutras. anytime we have so many different teachers with so many different opinions, or teachers that seem to be sharing revelations we didn't know about, clearly the reason is that it wasn't very clear in the sutras themselves. So when we're talking about concentration, the common concentration, like in the like in this text we're studying, it's much more related to number 6 of right effort. So again, when I learned right effort, they taught us it was just having the right effort in all your studies and prayers and practices, a very straightforward kind of understanding. But the Theravada have this deeper understanding. And they say it's to meditate diligently on the accurate understanding of the teachings. So this uh, this has a lot more to do with your willpower and your will towards the practice itself. Number 7, right, mindfulness, which we usually think of mindfulness as being just being present in the present moment. Uh, but here again, this is related to mindfulness, that it's usually translated as to focus properly and fully upon the object of meditation. And then number 8, right concentration. And I'm reading from our Skillful Living text as we speak. So these are in there. And I could give you a page number if anybody's in. So I don't have it on me. I can't give you a page number. But it's in the chapter on happiness. Um, right concentration is gaining meditative stability, free of laxity and excitement, or anxiety and laxity, as I like to say. So, as you can see, it's a little confusing as far as where each one of these aspects come in. Like, which one is singularly focused on single point of concentration? And to me, the idea is that none of them are. They're all contributing factors. Right concentration, gaining meditative stability free of laxity and excitement, seems to be clear to me that they're talking about gaining that meditative experience. They're not talking about the practice that leads to it. So, so when Bhante G uses the word concentration, uh, clearly he's not using the concentration term that they use in the Eightfold Path, that synonymous with samadhi. Bhante G is talking about single-pointed concentration. And so to me, it seems single-pointed concentration uh, arises from the combination of 6 and 7, right effort, right mindfulness, to meditate diligently and accurately on the understanding of the teachings. But here, I think you could say applying the right will or willpower, the right energy, the right diligence. That's what this is in right effort. And then right mindfulness is how to focus that properly and fully upon the object. Mindfulness is, of course, that which stops our mind from moving away from the object. So, uh, so in the article, when it says concentration versus mindfulness, he's making a clear distinction between the two. That was particularly confusing to me until I realized that every time he uses the word concentration, he is saying single pointed concentration. But then as I look at this, I think that, well, right mindfulness is clearly an aspect of it. So I had problems with the article with the distinction that these two qualities are distinctly different. To me, they're contributing factors in each other. That it takes a level of single pointedness to maintain mindfulness, and it takes mindfulness to uphold single pointed concentration. So, and I want all of you to think about that. It's just something I'm putting out there to let me know what you think about it yourself. So, that's how concentration is applied to the Noble Eightfold Path. And then we use concentration in as one of the categories of the threefold training. And this is this is the path of the Bodhisattva path, right? I'm sorry, this is the aim of the Buddhist path, the direction or map of the Buddhist path, represented as a triangle, if you remember. We have ethics or goodness at the bottom. We have wisdom on one side, and we have concentration on the other. So ethics or goodness is self-explanatory. Wisdom is self-explanatory. It's understanding the true nature of ourselves in reality. It's understanding who and what we are, understanding our environment, our reality, and how we relate to that environment and reality. But concentration again becomes a very difficult term. And here, again, the word should be samadhi, which is in Pali. Uh, but samadhi just doesn't have a good translation in English. It really is meditative state. So in some ways that's the second that second part of the triangle over there should be meditative states, but it's also the methodology that helps us to achieve meditative states. So in the Bodhisattva path, they'll call that third one, they'll call it method. So they have ethics, wisdom, and method, because it's not just meditative states, but it's all the methods that arise that help us to attain that. And then wisdom on the other side is just learning about ourselves and understanding ourselves and our world, right? So again, concentration is a difficult term there. I've often thought about translating it as stability and many different terms. I just leave it as the common translation in the Skillful Living text as concentration. But again, it's a really bad kind of idea. And then uh, and then mindfulness, we learned that. So in the paper, I think Bhante makes a very valuable point that was really helping me. I always thought that I wasn't very good at single pointed meditation, that I just happened to be a person with a very active, busy mind. I excel at insight meditation, and I would usually concentrate on that. But some of the things he said gave me some hope, and I thought, I think I could possibly do better at it. And I've been practicing it this week with great success. And the one thing that he made clear that I hadn't heard before, he talks about single pointed concentration, that it can or should be applied with some force, an active willpower, right? And so we had a teaching just a handful of weeks ago where we talked about that very thing. We talked about the sixth step of the Eightfold Path, right effort, is about that you can apply some effort into your meditation. And we talked about in that teaching that there's a dichotomy of view in meditation, and it's kind of east and west. So uh, in Zen Buddhism and Chan Buddhism, they came up with a style of meditation where the idea is to just sit, to just absolutely do nothing, to just sit in the experience. It's called Zazen. There's no methods other than, for beginners, a little bit of counting, but once you become good at Zazen, you don't count, you don't do anything. No insight meditation, not even following the breath. You just sit. Absolutely, that's all you do. And so many people conflate these different meditation techniques. I'm not giving a judgment of which one is great, is good. Some people love the Zen, some people love the more Western. I mean Western by Tibetan, Indian, and Theravada views. It's up to you which ones you like. They're both brilliant, brilliant accounts. I started in Zen and I loved it. I'm a big fan. But it's important to understand the difference. Nowadays, they're conflated. I think it's becoming a lot of problems for people. So people will hear this idea of Zen that, oh, the idea is to do nothing. But I'm afraid the Western version does not have that same view. In fact, from the sutras, all of the Buddha's advice, I could say all the Buddha's advice, is more to do with method. There's a lot of methods that the Buddha shares, going all the way back to the four foundations of mindfulness, which are the Buddha's first instructions for meditation. Yes, he starts with meditating on the body and breath and just watching the breath, but you're not doing it in that same way that Zazen is. There's more awareness going on. There's more method. The Buddha says when you're breathing in, you recognize it and you say to yourself, I'm breathing in. When you're breathing out, you say, I'm breathing out. I'm breathing short. I'm breathing long. I'm breathing heavy. I'm breathing lightly. You can see, though, the Buddha's giving a method to it. And then, of course, the four foundations of mindfulness, we meditate on all aspects of the body, not just the breath. We get in the feelings of the body. Somewhat, we get into Vipassana, which does body scanning, another method. The Theravada tradition got into Katina meditation, in which they focus on visual objects of meditation, these little clay things that made little ornaments in different colors that represent different elements and different emotions. So, other than Zen, uh, most Buddhist meditations are heavily focused on meditating. We're on method. We're not just sitting there. So now, whichever one you choose is wonderful, and one isn't better than the other. They're just different techniques. But if we conflate them, and you're doing some Tibetan meditations or some Theravada meditations, and that little voice comes in, oh, you're not supposed to be doing anything. It's really important that everybody knows the difference. So for me, when I got into single pointed concentration, I think that was the problem I always had because I started in Zen. Whenever I did single pointed, I kind of did a version of Zazen where I would follow the breath, but I wouldn't do anything. And and we've nicknamed it vegetating instead of meditating. And I think I did this for years. The point is, I would sit there, try to focus on the breath, but the mind would just drag me all over the place. I didn't know how to actually apply some strength of will and say no. And so, since I've discovered this in my own practice, I've been making a lot more progress. So, and a Theravada teacher taught me this about the sixth of the Eightfold Path. Right effort is about that. It's about using your mind to physically overcoming, using your will to physically overcoming the mind from doing whatever it wants to actually using effort, right? An act of willpower. And you just say, no, I'm not gonna let my mind wander off. Now, with that said, it's done with a softness, with a gentleness, an openness, a spaciousness. But nevertheless, next time you practice calm abiding, don't just sit there, follow the breath, and hope that the mind doesn't wander away. Because I hear what everybody says at the end of our meditations. Well, today it was just dragging me all over, and today this problem came up. We have the ability to get into that state and just say, no, no, no. Mind, I'm not doing that today. This is meditation, right? So I'd love everybody to practice this and see how it works for you. But remember, we never force the mind. It's always done in a gentle, soft way. The point is this is another tool for your toolbox that you can actually use your willpower within your calm abiding meditation. And this is called right effort. And this is instruction from the Buddha himself. So I want everybody to start using right effort in their mindfulness, in their uh, calm abiding meditation. And remember, calm abiding is really focused on single pointed concentration. There is an aim. It's not just about becoming calmer and more content. Once we can achieve this single pointed concentration, that's where the real amazing experiences of meditation and the real amazing benefits of meditation come into play. And what I'm really talking about is this is when we really start to gain control over the mind. And when you get control of your mind, that's true happiness. Okay, so So here we're talking about single point of concentration that we can be you can use active willpower to achieve it, and we can put some effort into that. Whereas mindfulness is a little bit different. That mindfulness tends to be a gentler and softer effort, even though we want to be soft and gentle in that effort, but here even less so. And it's more of a letting go. As all of you know, you're all meditators, you know mindfulness. But mindfulness is a letting go, it's an acceptance, it's a of it's about becoming present, stillness, right? You feel being one with the environment. But here again, the Bhante Ji makes the strong distinction between concentration being a strong willpower and mindfulness being the opposite. And I just don't believe that's true because, as a lot of you know, mindfulness takes effort as well. And mindfulness isn't just always soft and gentle. I mean, that's a pretty good way to describe it, but it's not always that way, right? When you're angry, and you really feel that emotion. I mean, you're really angry and you're using mindfulness to keep yourself stable. That's not a gentle thing, is it? You know, and that needs to be applied with effort also. So I understand his definition of the two, that single point of concentration is more about uh, an active focus with a little bit of willpower, and mindfulness is more of an open letting go. But his distinction of making them so so dichotomized, so separate from each other, I find I couldn't agree with. And then the idea, like we just said a moment ago, it seems like these qualities of right effort and mindfulness uh, work together to create concentration itself. So I think mindfulness is clearly a component of it, and we all know that mindfulness itself is the main focus or the main aspect of meditation. Itself is focus. So how can concentration be absent of mindfulness, right? I don't say that Bhante Ji says that, but in some ways, I kept getting a feeling like he was trying to really make the strong distinction between the two. But I think what he should have been making a distinction to was the difference between right effort and right concentration. To me, that would have summed up the paper a little bit better. And on that note, I am done talking. I said I was going to do a short teaching and I'm managing it. But I'd love to hear some views of others. And I'd love to hear from Keith, who is the one who posted the article originally. And Keith, do you think I'm onto something here? Do you think that I'm I'm reading? I have a nice interpretation of his work.
I think so, and not to kick the can down the road, but I'd actually kind of like to hear what other people have to say about it.
As far as Sangha members today, excellent. We, our friend Dylan, just reminded me that he's been doing some teachings, reading some teachings on this, and I was curious what Dylan had to say.
So I've been listening to Ajahn Sona from the Theravada tradition speak a lot on specifically right effort, right mindfulness, and right and sama samadhi, to use that term instead. Um, and really, mindfulness, right mindfulness specifically, is at the service of right effort, and sama samadhi comes from those. So they're very, very intertwined. Um, and he liked to talk about right mindfulness as a sentry, uh, like a guarding the city of your body, and very clearly having its orders on what to let into the city. if that makes any sense. So very specifically, right mindfulness at the service of right effort.
Oh, that's lovely. It'd be great if you could post that article on our groups. I'd love to read that. So that was my take as well. That the idea that that right effort and right mindfulness really lead to right concentration. So I don't think that Bhante G is wrong. I think again it gets fuzzy with terminology. You know, when you just say concentration like that, and he's also not talking about samadhi when he says concentration. He's talking about single pointed concentration that leads to samadhi. So when he uses that word, so he's really talking more about the third of the threefold path. Yeah.
It was a series of talks actually on a podcast.
Oh,
So it was many hours worth of talks that I listened to
lovely.
while I was working. So there's quite a bit of content there. If you just look up Ajahn Sona, he has a YouTube channel and podcasts and stuff that you can look at.
And he's wonderful. He has so many great Theravada teachers. Would anybody else like to chime in?
Tharpa, can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Thanks, Keith. I read the article this week and I found it especially useful because I started my meditation in seriousness this week, and I'm partial to the union meditation. And I found that the concentration insight thingy, it works quite well together. But the real thought that came up was that concentration and mindfulness, is it perhaps not another spectrum? That concentration in some form is perhaps mindfulness because you only focus on one thing, whereas with mindfulness, you typically focus on a whole lot of things, at the same time. And what led me to that thought is that I remember being engrossed in things and then not being responsive to temperatures or the fact that I might be hungry or somebody might be babbling somewhere. And then to some extent, I'm not even mindful of those things because I'm so engrossed and so concentrated on this one particular thing. So then to summarize, is concentration not a form of mindfulness where you mind one thing as opposed to a whole lot of things?
Yeah, and you're using the word concentration here in the common sense, and I think that within Buddhism, maybe we would define concentration in the common way, like when we talk about when we're at school or we're focusing on something, as active willpower, right? That efforts, right? So when we say right effort, I think we're really talking about that is a right concentration, but concentration used in the common way. And I think right effort is a good term for it. It's our willpower. It's that push that says, that little oomph that we're going to do it. So yeah, very nice. And then yeah, it isn't that a requirement of mindfulness, right? That has to be there. So mindfulness could pick the object, but we need that concentration, we need that effort, that little bit of a will to hold it there, right? So yeah, to me they work together, right? And one just simply doesn't work without the other. Yeah. You're so smart. It's because you just took refuge. Everyone's IQ goes up 10 points when you take refuge. I might not have told you that before.
It does seem like it.
Except mine. Every time I give refuge, mine goes down.
Where it's
Miss
coming
Kath,
from.
yeah. Miss Catherine, you got any views? I know you're sitting on your hands over there.
I've always got views. I've got views. My views are that there's a chap called Bernard Font, who is a teacher, and he describes mindfulness as that which guards the practice and samadhi as that which is absorbed in the practice. And they're two very different things. So to me, I agree that single pointed concentration is part of samadhi, but it's you, like you said, it's the vehicle that takes you to this sort of what Stephen Batchelor calls collectiveness. So he calls samadhi collectedness, and he's talking about having a collected mind, which is the opposite of an unscattered mind. So
well, that
it's
by
a mind.
definition is single pointed concentration.
Yeah, but there's more to it. There's the aspect of concentration, which is a big part of it, obviously. But on top of the concentration, he says that there is also a sort of effective feeling of calm, of clarity, of quiet, of collectedness. That's the only way I can describe it. And as well as that, there's a kind of ethical part to it. Obviously, you're sort of, the ethics are in there. You can be fully concentrate. They give this. Everybody must have heard this. The idea of you can be a somebody who's about to shoot somebody, and you can concentrate really hard on hitting them. That's not ethical concentration. So there's an ethical part to it. And when your mind is calm and concentrating and collected, your mind is more workable, more malleable. So they talk about collectedness. And when they're talking about mindfulness, it's more as Tenzin Shonan said, it's more about the gatekeeper. Again, ethical, but the gatekeeper being aware of what is wholesome and what is not wholesome, what's to be kept, what's to be left alone, what's going on in my thoughts, but not so much that, what is the energy behind my thoughts, what's pulling me, is it positive, is it negative, is it neutral, am I grasping, am I averse to something, what do I cultivate and what do I let go of? So two very, very different things to me.
Wonderful. I agree completely. And it's true. Like when you reach single pointed concentration and meditation, there's an experience, and it's a very pleasant experience. And then that leads to even deeper experiences. That leads then to samadhi, of meditation, of meditative concentration or meditative absorption, and that's an even deeper experience of that. Oftentimes, they'll mention that's the experience of single pointed concentration is equanimity, the highest point of the 10th of the levels of calm abiding, and then I think that leads then to the state of these deeper meditative states, and then up into the jhana states, which some of you have studied and
Yes,
learned about.
Stephen Batchelor would say it's a state of non-reactivity. You're not being reactive, and that's a pleasant state to be in. So there's joy in that state, and the mind likes that state.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's step 8 or step 9 of the calm abiding is when that pushing and pulling of anxiety and laxity falls away. That's that experience of equanimity. So
and when you talked about effort, it reminded me, as you know what I feel about Goenka, but when I was on my Goenka retreat and I had to spend 3.5 days concentrating on this bit, on the Hitler mustache, that took a lot of effort, but I was telling myself to do it. I mean, I was pushing myself on to do that, and I think that was beneficial, putting effort into that.
I think the most beneficial thing for me when we were talking about this a few weeks ago, the idea of right effort, was that I just had a clear realization on how we all just let our minds just drag us around. Like we all we have a direction and we say, oh, I want this to happen, I want that to happen. But most of us just kind of let our minds drag us around. And people ask, well, how are you? And you look at yourself and say, oh, I'm happy. But it's whatever our mind drags us to, right? We're hoping we fall into good states. And all of a sudden I realized that I could be proactive, not just in my meditation, but all the time. That I have the ability to say, I'm not going to be in a negative mood right now. Just refuse to. Now, easier said than done. And there's some situations it doesn't work. Believe me. I'm not going to be angry. But within that spectrum, there is a lot of places to work with it, and you really can say no to the mind and thoughts that come up and emotions that come up. You do it slowly. The more you do it, you get better at it. So you don't be frustrated by it because it's not easy to do, but we do have that ability. And so in meditation, when I'd like some of you to practice single pointed concentration this week, and let's all practice single pointed concentration this week and put it to the test. And I want you this time, when you're focusing on the breath and the mind wanders off, be a bit proactive and just say, no, I'm not letting the mind go there and do that. Easier said than done. The reactive mind kind of jumps there even before you have any choice. But as you get better, you're able to hold that place and catch the mind trying to lure you away and say no to it and stay. And so, since I've been digging into this, my single pointed concentration has really benefited, really increased. So I'd like everybody to try that. But then the interesting thing is that how it's a reflection on your own life. Then you realize that all the things in your life that you can also say no to the mind, though it doesn't seem to work for food at all. It works for everything except for chocolate ice cream. For each of us, we'll all have our issues and where it works and where it doesn't. But that's what I was really intrigued by. So, in a sense, that's the thing I'm really still intrigued by is this whole idea of right effort. Yeah, Chantal says it reminds her of the element concentrations like earth and mindfulness like water. Sure. Yeah.
I was just going to chime in real quick. There's and I can't remember her name. I think she's German, who wrote a book called Outsmart Your Pain. And she uses the phrase when her mind starts to wander or starts to ask questions and, kind of start doing its things, is no, thank you, not right now. And it's kind of and you're right. I think sometimes you need more of a force, but at times, if it's possible, take it gently. No, thank you, not right now.
That's excellent, Keith. So yeah, there's a spectrum there, isn't it? We have all those different tools to work with, right? And so we don't have to be forceful. I think I was trying to make a point, but with me, I don't force it. I think I mentioned that we do it in a soft, gentle way, right? And so yeah, and that's wonderful. Yeah, you can be friends with it and work with it. Neil?
Yeah. I was watching a YouTube video on the teachings of the Eightfold Path. And like you said, right concentration has various different interpretations. And what they referred to was stillness. How do you agree with that?
No, I think ultimately you just can't get away from the Pali word of it, the samadhi, the meditative state. So now that's a spectrum. So it begins with stillness, it begins with presence and stillness, but samadhi's even a greater experience than stillness. That's a very deep meditative concentration. So all three of those qualities and others like equanimity, they're all on that spectrum. So I agree with that completely. I believe that what the Buddha meant on the eighth aspect of concentration. He means meditative state, and the achievement of the meditative state, the achievement in being able to hold it, not using concentration to get there, but that right effort and right mindfulness lead to the attainment of this meditative state of samadhi. And then you work with samadhi as part of the Eightfold Path of being able to deepen it and to prolong it and to make it your default mindset. Good point, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boy, we got a smart Sangha. What do you think, Donna? Interesting subject. You got any thoughts on it?
Well, yes. Generally, I'm thinking there are so many methods and so many states that, and innumerable beings from past, present, and future, that none of it's the same for anybody.
I would agree with it partially, but it seems like there's a similarity in experience for people. At least that's what the traditions are positing. And the idea is that they, by working with these meditations and by working with their students, they seem to be finding a rough framework. But your point is well taken, that that framework should be seen as just a framework, to realize that those experiences are different for everybody, and especially because we know that they're direct experiences, and you really can't convey a true meaning of those. So there's a great deal of truth in that. But then there is this idea of similarities, that people seem to be having fairly similar situations. It gets even more problematic when you look at like the grounds and paths of how all the stages up to Buddhahood, the five grounds and 10 stages, and you're thinking that's impossible that somebody could, it's like they're walking, it's like somebody put little chalk things on the pavement, and you're just going to walk down the path. It's hard to believe that they could map it out like that. So I'm quite suspicious of that as well.
I'm also wondering, what did the Buddha experience? How many of these parts did he experience? And how many are we as humans, other humans, adding to it? Does that make sense?
It does, and you really stumped me. I don't get stumped often. So the Buddha talked about these various states, but what the Buddha shared in the sutras and what's shared in the Abhidharma, there's three baskets to the Buddhist canon: Vinaya, which are rules and conduct and vows, training; Sutra, the words of the Buddha; and Abhidharma. Abhidharma was created, quite a bit of time after the Buddha's death, and it was a way to take all the Buddha's teachings and turn them into a set curriculum. And a great deal of the things we know about, like things like this, come from the Abhidharma, which aren't the words of the Buddha, although they'll say they are. They'll say the Buddha wrote these. He wrote these in the heaven realms to his deceased mother, and then brought him down on a golden staircase to earth to share it with all of mankind. So the point is, it's quite confusing. And then in Theravada Buddhism, it's also quite confusing because there's so much commentary that people take a sutra. And though I've read all of the various sutras, for the life of me, I can't pinpoint which ones are there, which ones aren't. Of course, the Eightfold Path is there. That's from the sutras. But as far as some of these other stages, the things like the jhanas, which are the higher level of calm abiding, or actually past calm abiding, that's a great example because different traditions have different views. Some posit 4 jhanas, some posit 8, and I think another one was 6. I think there were 3 different versions depending on where you see. So I'm afraid I don't have a clear answer for you. Does anybody know the answer to that? That's a tough question. We paid Donna to come and hurt our brains. She's on retainer. What do you think, Mike? Heavy stuff. You need a pipe when you.
So yeah, I've been working for some time now trying to get an understanding of equanimity, and suddenly after this conversation I think a much deeper understanding. I really liked the idea that a falling away of anxiety and laxity is equanimity. And those are things I experienced in my life quite a bit. And when I have had them fall away and experienced equanimity, it's been very, very nice, a very great thing. When we talk about practice and concentration and mindfulness on the cushion, and I can't help but think that when we get up off the cushion, how much better we're able to do things in our life, whether it's planting a tree or making a menu or interacting with another person. These things, the concentration and mindfulness, are amazing tools, capabilities, whatever, to help us in those areas also. So those are some things that came to my mind.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And then let's not forget the clarity that comes from meditation. When we calm down and all that scattered noise, that white noise in our brains is kind of diminished, and we actually have moments of clarity. That clarity is the most productive thing in our lives. Because I think that's what messes us up the most is just the chaos in our minds, emotional and mental chaos, at different levels. Sometimes it's just way down at the bottom, but it's just there, it's noise. And the more you can limit that, as you can imagine, the better you think and the better your emotions function. Thank you, Mike.
Mike, I want
Donna.
to say I also came to a better understanding of equanimity today, hearing about anxiety and being right there in the middle.
Yeah, and when you're in a deep state of it in meditation, like Mike was mentioning, that there are moments during our lives that we're there. Certain activities happen and we feel quite. I can't really think of it because often, even if something good happens, so you get a new job and you're excited. But if you look at the same time you're excited, you're already worrying that you might not be able to do the job. You know what I mean? We're just that it's just always going on. But when you sit in meditation, you feel it really strongly. It's an extraordinary feeling. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there and you go, oh, there it is. I'm here. I got something, man. I'm here. And you try to sit with it and not let it go anywhere. And it makes a really comfortable meditation. But it's quite profound, I have to say. It's not this little thing that you feel like it kind of coming. My experience, all of a sudden they stopped, and I was in a meditative state, and it was quite extraordinary. And it is whenever I can get it to happen again. It doesn't always happen. Okay, how about some of you other brainiacs? Who has something? Tom, you got any comments for us? We're coming up on an hour. Maybe we'll just have one more comment or so. Okay, so here's my idea. We got a week before our skillful living practice starts. Why don't we do a week of single point of concentration? Would that be cool? So I've been focusing more on this. Usually I do insight meditation, just because of this article, and it really made a benefit. And I'm like, hey, maybe I can actually do this. So let's just try it for a week and see. We'll do. How about we do calm abiding meditation every day during our daily meditations? That sounds boring, but not if you really set a goal. And again, you could focus on the breath. or radiating awareness, whatever your object of meditation is. But again, what we're going to do is we're just going to use a pinch more effort. We're just a little bit, nothing heavy. We're not going to be tough on ourselves. We're just going to put a little effort and just realize that you do have control over you do have some control over the mind. You can say no to the mind. And for me, it's just getting into what I do is this. I get into my meditative state, and then when it's subtle enough, I could almost feel the energy of a thought arising before it arises. There's almost like the way my mind works. I can feel the mental. It's almost like it's that anxiousness, and my mind wants to do something, and I feel that, and then I just kind of watch it. I don't do anything. I'll put just a little bit more effort on the breath, just a pinch, and just like, don't go there, So that's what I do. And that really works for me, right? And then you can get to the point in meditation where you can enter thoughtless states and just no thought comes in for the longest time, right? That it's possible. I can just stop thinking whenever I want to and hold it for a pretty good amount of time. If I'm lucky, sometimes, usually I can't do the whole meditation of a half an hour. In an hour meditation, I might fall out a couple times. But once I could do a whole hour, then that's a big deal in meditation. Then the teachers will be impressed with you. If you can do a whole hour without the mind going once, that's a really strong single point of concentration. They say when you've really reached it, you can go 4 hours, the mind never wandering off the breath. Not even a little. But let's shoot for the little things, right? Let's try like 10 breaths without the mind wandering away or something. I remember one of the first ones was to be able to go around a whole mala, not say anything, but just rotating the beads and seeing if you can not think for that whole mala. But again, we don't force the mind to not think. What you're doing is you're holding the mind on the breath and in a gentle way allowing it not to think. You never try not to think. It's always about maintaining your effort on the breath. Okay, I think I've said enough. Should we end today's meditation with a prayer? We forgot to start today's meditation with prayer. May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well, may all be present, free of past regret and future worry. May all abide in constant appreciation, which is a source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Thanks for joining me, everybody. We'll start today our single point of concentration. And come tomorrow for our meditation at 1600 UTC.
Thank you, Tharpa.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you.